Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research established this research center, which is the Petroleum Research Center, with the aim to make it a regionally recognized center of excellence in both upstream and downstream technologies.
The main purpose of this center actually is to serve the oil sector and to be the R&D arm of the petroleum industry in Kuwait.
It has a foundation. It is the first in the region. It was started in 1967, so it has a fairly amount of maturation.
The development of technologies in different areas is a continuous process. Why you develop every time? Because there is a need, there is a requirement, there is a way that you have to find a cost-effectiveness technology, impress technology which can fulfill your requirement.
There is enormous challenges that the petroleum industry is facing, and those challenges definitely needs innovative answers.
We are concentrating on how to improve the reserved oil in the country, how we can probably develop technologies to improve the recovery.
In this center, we have 5 types of programs. Each program is focused in one area in the field. First program, we call it Enhance Oil Recovery. Enhance Oil Recovery means their work is totally with the upstream.
The reservoir is the more complex part of the earth geology, and as we go to deeper and more difficult oil, we need more understanding. This way we will enhance our capability of producing at lower costs.
If we develop a technology which has to do related to enhanced oil recovery, increasing the production, this technology, of course, can be used in any other country, in the GCC countries or in the world, based on how much effective is this technology.
Another 2 programs, we call one of them optimization refining processes, and we have refining capacity flexibility. These 2 programs under the downstream process.
This program particularly deals with the hydroprocessing. Hydroprocessing means you treat the petroleum fraction in presence of the catalyst and the hydrogen.
We have a number of patents related to the spent catalyst in which we try to develop a technology to recover the metals as well as to reuse this spent catalyst. This can be used everywhere if it is acceptable and then commercialized.
We are very good in catalysis monitoring. Also, we have now for producing the catalyst as well. We're preparing of the catalyst evaluation, and also we are doing it in our labs. We have here a unique lab. We call it pilot plant, which is simplified from the refinery.
We try to align our research activities with the requirement needed by KNPC, and at the same time having this facility which I'm talking now here is give us the opportunity, because this consider a small refinery which is mimicking the real refinery. It's operational 24 hours. So if we target a certain specific product, so we can make a full study, giving the results upon the completion of the results, giving it to the client, namely KNPC. There is a great potential to use it on the commercial units.
It's important because the refinery and all the technology are changing with the years, okay, in order to take account of the environment. But more you take account of the environment, you reduce the gain of the refinery. You have to maintain your gain respecting the environment. Because of this, we are developing this technology that they are taking account all these elements.
Petroleum refining, you are processing specific feedstock, but this feedstock's also properties is changing, so you need to develop catalyst. As the property changes, the sulfur content, for example, the sulfur content is increasing. So what technology that you have to use in order to reduce the sulfur, to be accepted worldwide, so the people, they can buy your commodity or your product, which is meeting the international standards. So the demand for technology development is always there.
Fourth one, which is the corrosion assessment and mitigation. And here it's falling into two areas, which is downstream and upstream, and to prevent any kind of failures happens in the future.
Cost of corrosion for the oil industry is in millions. Imagine a simple failure in a refinery, a crack in a vessel or a pipe or a reactor. It means for the refinery shutdown of a unit, and they take several days to change the damaged piece of equipment. So you lose production for several days.
The last one, which will be petrochemicals.
In our program, we are focused on enhancing the product properties, and we are focusing as well on trying to engineer high-performance polymers. In these two solutions, we can help the sector to be more competitive in comparison with the market and international market products.
There are many technologies worldwide, but which technology would suit the reservoir that you have? Imagine not only each country has its own oil properties, but each well, it has its own characteristics. So in this case, you have to really look into technology to produce what we call this type of crude oil, which is under category of non-conventional oil recovery. That's why we introduced the improved oil recovery, the enhanced oil recovery, to produce the heavier feedstock.
We're also responsible to have staff to be well-skilled and trained, Kuwaiti staff in particular, also having students from university, from public authority to having their, for example, their thesis or something like that. So we work collaboratively with those affiliation in order to end up with high caliber staff that can not only be used at Kisar but also in the oil sector.
We have to really be ready and confident in our research projects that we conduct, and also to be highly recognized and acknowledged for the science and technology and innovation, locally, regionally, and internationally.
I think the needs require such institute to exist, not only in Kuwait and the region, but all over the world, because energy is one of the main factors that impact sustainability.
We have a fantastic team, we have a marvelous equipment under one roof, so it is really a platform to start directional research in all kinds.
The vision is clear now. Based on this close relationship that we have, now it's getting more and clearer to us exactly where to focus and how to probably achieve these plans that we set.
Arctics is a collaboration project involving 6 universities, 4 research institutes and 8 oil companies in Norway. And our aim and goal is to understand the petroleum resources of the Arctic, how to develop the best possible technology that suits the Arctic, which has the least possible environmental impact. The research is mainly divided into 3. So 3 intertwined projects. One is to understand the Arctic geology.
We're dealing with petroleum geology and exploration of the Barents Shelf, so of course geology is a very crucial and important component. I've been working with several different projects and different aspects of sedimentation in Svalbard and the Barents Sea. But particularly I've been focusing on the Paleogene succession that were deposited 60 million years ago in what they call the central basin of Spitsbergen. So I think this basin is a good analog to some of the basins that you find along the western Barents Shelf margin.
Here you can see there's a layer in the rocks that is a bit darker here, and across the fault you see that this block here has gone down on the other side of the fault. Here you have a layer of sediments here that is thicker where the fault has moved down, so you had some space to deposit more sediments.
Of course, when it comes to exploration, having Svalbard as an uplifted part of the subsurface is very important, because then we can use this as an analog to the stratigraphy that the companies are working with in the southern part of the Barents Sea.
The other one is to understand the environmental impact of our activities.
We operate with ecosystem-based management in this region of the world, and that means it's a balance of protecting the environment but also utilizing the resources that exist there. And that is a big challenge, because you have to bring all the stakeholders to the table, you have to communicate the risks, and you have to come up with solutions and manage the future development activities. The final component is a focus on marine mammals, because marine mammals are at the top of the food web in the Arctic. They're very much associated with sea ice, so we have a very strong focus on marine mammals in the program.
Marine ecology is an important part of ArcX, because we want to work sustainable, and we need to understand the ecosystem. In case something happens, then we need to understand which consequences it can have for the ecosystem.
And the third is to develop the best possible eco-friendly technology that is suitable in these vulnerable areas.
We are taking part in other projects that use new technology to collect data and analyze data. So of course that's the link between kind of old school conventional geology, being out in the field, is easily combined with new technology.
We also do some technology projects where we develop drone technology for use in these areas, and that requires special infrastructure.
I use drones or unmanned aerial vehicles to look at marine mammals, more specifically whales. They fly in using waypoints, following a set path that we design in a computer with the help of Norut. And then every 3 or 4 seconds they take a picture, and then I look to see if there's a whale there or not, and look at the quality of that picture to see how certain I am and what are the light conditions. It's essentially to test how good these tools are, because the use of these systems is quite recent and has been developing really fast. So having this for marine mammals, it removes almost completely having the observation that you collect at sea and then goes away, that nobody else can look at that. So then you have a recording that several people can see, and you can remove what's so-called as the observer bias.
The biggest resource we have in a program like this is the group of young people.
We have a number of PhD students and postdocs based at universities, but they are also coupled to institutes.
What I'll be doing is that I will investigate the source rock properties of a specific period, the Triassic period. And also next year we plan to go to Svalbard and collect samples there as well. So I will also be collecting samples in Bjørnøya. And we'll correlate that with wells which have been drilled in the Barents Sea. And we can see how these properties of the source rock changes laterally. And then we can try to determine how the quality of the source rock is in terms of hydrocarbon potential.
We conduct many field expeditions and research expeditions, and it could be close by, or it could be trips that require the use of ships. And the University of Tromsø has a research vessel that we use for that. And then we have access to very good laboratories at several of the participating universities, but also industry partners help us with their laboratories. So all in all, it's a complicated mix of different infrastructure that helps us to conduct the research and give best possible results back to the participants. I don't know any other project which brings all of these activities together into one project like this. And also the sheer volume and size of this project is such that we will have an impact. It's an 8-year project involving many partners.
The cooperation between the academia, the government and the companies as cooperators is very unique in a region setting at least. And the size of the project and the diversity is also very unique.
It's a continuous process of improving the way we do things as new knowledge comes to the table.
By getting communication going, we can actually also get good information back from authorities that we can use to improve our research programs. The ultimate delivery, I think, is that we would have been very useful for the authorities, for the oil companies, and for the research institutions and universities who are involved in the project. We will have educated about 30 PhD students and trained postdocs, and we will have published a set of good papers in the best journals.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Are you ready to start the session? The last few people coming in. Very good. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this new day. And we have a council session this morning, so this is the first plenary of today, I understand. My name is Elizabeth Torstad. I'm the CEO of DNVGL Oil and Gas, and I have the honor and privilege of leading this panel this morning. With me this morning, I have Bob Dudley, Chief Executive of BP, Barry Warrington, Executive Director of the United States Energy Association, and Amir Hossein Samaniya, the Deputy Minister of Petroleum Trade and International Affairs of Iran. So I'm sure we'll have some very good insights from all these gentlemen. Before we start, I'll just give you a short introduction and share some thoughts with you. So we will talk today about taking leadership for responsible operations. And we all hear the numbers and see the statistics and feel that we're in the middle of this energy transition. We have heard in the petroleum industry lots of considerations about this not being a cycle, but a transition and a new era, a new sort of stable condition. We see the increase in energy demand, the continued need for fossil fuels, but also the strong dominance of fossil fuels, of course, in our energy portfolio. And we see these transitions and these changes coming at us with a need for us as an industry in this position to also take a leadership role and have the long-term perspective on our industry, on the energy situation in the world, and on how we act through this area. So there's many aspects about taking a leadership role. As I said, one thing is about having the long-term perspective of the industry. I'd like also to share a few words with you and a few insights around safety, environmental performance, and transparency, which I think are core elements of being in the industry for the long term. The oil and gas industry is unique in the sense that we are nurturing and we're responsible for resources that we as a world own. We also have a strong responsibility for providing the world with energy. So we have a core function in society. Therefore, we also need to act responsibly in the society we are working with. In DNVGL, we have a survey every year where we talk with executives throughout the industry. And we ask them a number of questions. So one of the questions we asked this year was about environmental performance. And more than half of our respondents says that our industry is successful in applying environmental targets. And you see some interesting differences up there between midstream organizations, upstream organizations, and the more mixed ones. We also see that the majority of the professionals and the executives say they are keeping up sustainability initiatives through tough times, through a focus also of cost and all the other aspects of the challenges that we're in the middle of. I'd like to also highlight for you that 81% is saying that our organization is meeting our environmental target, and more than half are saying we have targets for continuing to improve our environmental performance. So very strong signals from the industry in terms of taking a long-term commitment to environmental performance seriously. A couple of words about safety. DNVGL as an organization works across a number of industries, and we see it in our own work and we see it through other statistics. The oil and gas industry has a leading standard and performance when it comes to occupational safety. The focus on safety in the industry is really paying off, and we see statistics here over a number of years. However, what we also see is that around process safety, we still have issues to deal with, and we haven't been able to really bring the frequency and the occurrence of the major accidents down to the same level and in the same scale as we have with occupational safety. So that still needs to be a key focus area for us as an industry. We have also been looking into recently the UN Global Compact that we're working very closely with, and looking at the role that business takes in creating sustainable performance in this world. I think we've heard other speakers at this conference talk about the importance of business, and we'll also hear from at least one of the panelists here around the importance of business taking responsibility for our own actions and our own performance. And the large companies in particular show that they take sustainability serious, most significantly in the area of anti-corruption, where we've seen large developments over the last few years. One area of particular relevance for this industry, again, around transparency and anti-corruption, and we see some of the work of the extractive industries transparency initiative that has really, since the year of 2000, made a large impact and shown real progress in the area of reducing corruption and increasing transparency. We know that BP, who is one of the early movers as well on transparency reporting, is up here, and many of the majors have made significant strides in leading the way in this area. So I'd just like to end this short introduction with that key point. There are numerous challenges, but also numerous opportunities for us in the industry in the world looking forward. I think we need to show that we take a leadership role through years of transition and not only be led or be changed. I think that's a huge opportunity for us, but we need to continue to deliver on these areas of environmental performance, safety, and transparency. So with that, I end my introduction, and I'm very proud to introduce Bob Dudley to all of you, to the extent that he needs an introduction. He's the Chief Executive of BP, has been since 2010. He joined the industry in 1979. He's held various international positions for BP over the years. And welcome to the podium, Bob.
Well, thank you very much, Elizabeth. Your Excellencies, Mr. Chairman, good morning, everyone, friends of the industry. I think the WPC is often described as the energy industry's Olympics. It's like the Olympics. It's big, it's important, it's global, and that is certain. But unlike the Olympics, it's not about who comes in first, second, or third. But unlike the Olympics, I think it's like, I'd also like to say that I think that the Republic of Turkey deserves a medal for providing this tremendous venue here in Istanbul. The WPC should have one for creating such a wide-ranging and informative program. But primarily this event is about bringing our industry together so that we can listen, learn from each other, and discuss the challenges that we all face and the potential solutions. And from where we see things in BP, there are two fundamental challenges. The first is about providing more energy than ever before and more competitively than ever before. We all know demand is continuing to grow, driven by fast-growing economies like that of Turkey. Energy consumption here grew by 35% of the decade from 2005 to 2015. Which is more than twice the global average. And we expect to see global energy demand rise by around a third over the next couple of decades. That increase in demand has been anticipated for many years, but what's new is the increase in supply. We now have abundant supply. It's a fact of life with the shale revolution, the advances in technologies such as enhanced oil recovery. We have half a century's worth of oil and gas in our proved reserves alone, the world. And there is much more out there. China, Argentina, and Algeria are each estimated by some to contain as much shale as the US, for example. Debate over so-called peak oil has peaked some time ago, and the unlocking of so much new resources has changed the economics of our industry. When we last gathered for the WPC in Moscow in June 2014, oil was trading at around $108 a barrel. By the end of the following year, it was less than half that price, and it has stayed down so ever since. So our industry has been adjusting, and we have seen some balance coming back into the market, particularly in the past year, with the unprecedented agreement between OPEC and the non-OPEC producers. Ideally, what the world needs is a world where the prices are affordable for the customers while still providing sufficient capital for future investment. And what our business needs, all of our businesses, the ability to be resilient and competitive in a lower price environment, where only the most efficient producers will prevail. Meanwhile, on a longer wavelength, we faced a second challenge, and that is the challenge of climate change and the gradual transition to a lower carbon economy. In some places, policymakers are acting to advance lower carbon energy. In others, technologies and economies of scale are acting to bring down the cost of lower carbon energy. Either way, we need to respond by making our businesses fit for a low carbon world. So in short, we face two huge challenges. First, providing more energy than ever before in a competitive market, more than ever before. And second, reducing carbon emissions more than ever before. There are no quick fixes. There's going to be no overnight solutions. Yet history shows that our industry has taken on these kinds of challenges many, many times before and succeeded. So we should be positive, although these new questions need new answers. And we need to do more than just replay what we've done before. I think there are three areas we should focus our efforts on. The first is excellence in our operations, or as this session's title puts it, leadership in responsible operations. The second is the sustainability of our products, fully realizing that the benefits of both natural gas and renewables, as well as our downstream product ranges, are important. And the third is working together, simply working together in our partnerships, the kind of working together that makes new things happen and drives real change. Expanding just a little on each of these three things, just a little, operational excellence for BP is a foundation for safety, reliability, and competitiveness. We've learned a lot of lessons this decade. It means highly skilled, highly committed people around the world working in a disciplined and systematic way with very clear ways of working and advanced technology to deliver great results. Operational excellence means it will bring multiple outcomes. As we've seen in our company, it drives strong safety, it pushes up reliability, and allows us to minimize cost and maximize efficiencies. We have more to do as a company, but our journey really started in 2010, and it's been a positive one, step by step. In particular, we have recognized that oil and gas has a lot to learn from other industries, from manufacturing to IT. Often changes has meant doing less, not more, simplifying the way we work, reducing interfaces between all the different parts of a company, and eliminating duplication. It's a combination, I think, of just using common sense at large scale, taking full advantage of the wave of technology advances and converging in our industry, and quite frankly, looking to how to cut the bureaucracy in our own company. Technologies like big data are rewriting the rule book for E&P. Having already turned a page on exploration through seismic processing, digital technology is now opening lots of new chapters in our industry and production. Sensors, data lakes, real-time feeds, predictive software that allows us to maximize and optimize our production. What used to take weeks literally can now take minutes. BP engineer anywhere in the world can get real-time alerts on wells based on the processing of almost 1 billion data points a second. That was just unthinkable a short time ago. Quite truly amazing, I find it. Technology is also a role to play in the second area, sustainability of the industry's products. This is clear to me both in downstream and upstream. In the downstream, advanced technologies are really important in resolving that paradox of providing more energy while curbing emissions. Our projections and others suggest that while the global car fleet will double over the next 20 years, actually, I think it'll be 200 times over the next 20 years, from 1 million cars a day to as much as 200 million cars in 20 years, we still may have 2 billion cars on the roads and trucks. Growth in oil demand will go up by only about 1/5, but it'll still increase, but at a slowing rate. A whole series of technologies are contributing to that. Electric cars, hybrids, for example, are growing fast. Particular, smarter, more efficient internal combustion engines, more efficient fuels and lubricants. BP's advanced transport fuels and lubricants, such as Castrol, and aviation fuels, such as Biojet, are contributing to that trend, as are many of the products made by the companies represented here today. It's also driving down costs, technology, driving up the use of renewable energy. In many circumstances, renewables are now competitive with hydrocarbons. So there's a good business case for those investments as well. And as long as there are backup for when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow, it'll be the combination that we'll all work with. We continue to invest in renewables, building for a longer term with a large operating renewables business, in our case, biofuels and wind. We see that in Brazilian biofuels as the business becomes increasingly efficient, and in a large wind business in North America as new developments in turbines and technology become available. But we also have to recognize there's still a long way to go with renewables, because they're starting from a very low base today. There's only 3% of the world's energy is supplied from renewables, not counting hydro. Yet they are the fastest growing fuel, growing at a remarkable 12% a year. Actually 33% a year last year in Turkey. But even on that path of the world, they're only likely to make up around 10% of the total energy mix in 2035 based on the current trends, although that could increase with different policies and technology breakthroughs. Either way, common sense tells us that the ambition to reduce emissions cannot depend on renewables alone. Advancing a lower carbon future requires many building blocks, and natural gas will be one of the most important. The argument is strengthened when you consider that around 10% of total energy-related greenhouse gas emissions could be avoided if all existing coal-fired power plants were switched off today to state-of-the-art gas-fired power plants. That's, of course, not practical, but it gives you a sense of the importance of gas. The advantages of gas are clear. In our company, we're evolving our own production portfolio to contain larger percentages of gas. And this year, 6 out of 7 major projects coming on stream around the world will produce gas. 3 are already on stream, and 2 are imminent in Trinidad and Tobago and Australia. The trend is also relevant here in Turkey, where gas accounts for 1/3 of all energy that's used in this country. We have one of the largest partnership projects, the Southern Gas Corridor will bring a further 6 billion cubic meters a year of gas from the giant Shah Deniz field in the Caspian and Azerbaijan to the industrial customers across Turkey, as well as supplying an extra 10 billion cubic meters a year to the EU markets. Of the 3,500 kilometers of the pipeline, 1,850, more than half, are being laid in Turkey today. I think it opens up a new chapter in the way energy is supplied, and Turkey is helping to write that story as one of the great transport hubs of the world. And this only possible through teamwork. Lots of teamwork, and everybody here, shared goals, brings me to the last point of partnerships. I believe that business is based on relationships, not simply transactions and contracts. And good long-term relationships are needed to help us address the global challenges of energy. They help us increase efficiency in the work now underway to extend standardization areas such as procurement specifications. The big oil companies are getting together. We're starting to use the same kind of wellheads and valves. We used to be a marketplace. We used to have standards where we painted our valves different colors, and that was our standards. These are the kind of things that railroads wouldn't think about doing. They also help us reduce emissions when we work together, as demonstrated by a wide range of major global companies, national companies as well, that are here at the WPC working together in the Oil and Gas Climate Initiative, or the OGCI. Together, the OGCI companies have committed $1 billion to bring low-carbon technologies to the market, looking initially at reducing methane emissions, carbon capture use and storage, and just a lot of industrial efficiency in transportation. Partnerships between countries and companies are also important because trusting relationships lead to long-term agreements. Here in Turkey, we have a relationship that goes back over a century. and led not only to the construction of strategic pipelines, but a network of around 700 retail stations and lubricants. I think many of us in the room know that when businesses are in sync with governments, and vice versa, they can work together and make great things happen. The task of meeting demand competitively while simultaneously limiting emissions, is a very formidable one for all of us. But if we focus on the operational excellence, sustainability, and then these great partnerships, our shared sense of purpose, I'm sure we can meet this dual challenge and be part of the solution. Energy safely, responsibly, competitively, and sustainably over the decades ahead. There is an energy transition underway. We're going to be part of it. I think everybody in this room will be. And thank you very much, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. So next up is Barry Worthington, the Executive Director of the United States Energy Association. It's a U.S. member committee of the World Energy Council. It's also a bipartisan advisory organization representing 150 members across the whole energy sector, with a large variety of energy companies, type of energy, and so on. We're excited to hear what you have to say, Barry.
Thank you, Elizabeth, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure and honor to have the opportunity to address the World Petroleum Congress. This is a critically urgent organization, and we feel that we have a good relationship with it at the United States Energy Association. And so I was disappointed that my friend Dean Jurgen wasn't chairing the earlier session today. Dr. Jurgen is on the board of directors of the United States Energy Association, and he also was a recipient of our annual U.S. Energy Award a few years ago. And Dan is truly a great industry leader. And I also noted that about a year ago, the World Petroleum Council selected our now Secretary of Energy, Rex Tillerson, then Chief Executive Officer at ExxonMobil, to receive your 2017 award. It's interesting because about a year ago when you were making that decision, we were making the decision to honor Rex with the 2016 United States Energy Award. So I'm honored to have two colleagues here with us from our membership and that are very important to us. I'm also honored to share this stage today with our other industry leaders, Elizabeth and Bob. Bob, I'm certain you don't recall, but we met first in Houston in 2002 at the U.S.-Russia Commercial Energy Summit. I still have the same job today that I did 15 years ago, and Bob, you've kind of done a little bit better for yourself, so congratulations is very much in order. During that event in Houston, you did not hear a keynote address from me, but you did Dan Jurgen and Rex Tillerson. And here we are all in Istanbul 15 years later, and how our energy world has been turned upside down in the last 15 years, literally the last 10 years. Now, I know looking out at the audience, there's a number of you who appear to be somewhat younger than me, which wouldn't take a lot because I've been in this business for 40-some years. So I have a little bit of career advice for those of you who are kind of on the younger end of the spectrum, and that is associate yourself with industry visionaries like Rex Tillerson, Dan Jurgen, and Bob Dudley, and you'll end up in a good space. I'm going to take a couple of minutes now to discuss what our industry expects from the Trump administration in terms of energy policy. Let me be perfectly clear, I'm not speaking for the Trump administration. The U.S. Energy Association is not a government agency. We're a private, nonprofit membership association, and we are the U.S. member of the World Energy Council. So my comments are certainly not to be construed as administration policy, but rather my observations on administration policy. 2 weeks ago, President Trump announced 6 policy actions that can help us all understand what the path forward is likely to be. The first is that the administration will do a complete review of U.S. nuclear policy. There's three things that are important about this. First is to understand how baseload power fits into our ever-changing electric grid and the role of baseload power contributing to grid stability. And that can apply for coal as well as nuclear units in the United States. The second item is, what is the federal role in keeping U.S. nuclear plants operating, particularly in competitive power markets? And then third, what is the U.S. government role in international energy deals, particularly with the bankruptcy of Westinghouse and serious concerns in Washington that Westinghouse could be sold out of bankruptcy to a company or a government that we might prefer not have happen. The second item was a major review of U.S. and international finance institutions' funding of fossil activities, particularly coal-fired power plants. Our Export-Import Bank, or Overseas Private Investment Corporation, and the U.S. Trade and Development Agency will not provide any sort of funding for any kind of fossil energy project, whether it's a power plant, whether it's a coal mine, whether it's a pipeline. Also, similarly, from the international finance institution standpoint, the World Bank, the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and other multilateral financial institutions refuse to finance fossil energy projects anywhere in the world. But guess who will? The answer is China. And particularly with the new international lending institution that China created and led, they'll finance fossil projects. So we basically are giving our business to China. And I think the president is going to have this looked at very carefully and probably cause many of these ill-founded policies to change, where you'll see over time these international financial institutions will be lending for fossil projects. The third major announcement was a crude oil pipeline to Mexico, and as the president put it, underneath the wall. Number four, an announcement of long-term LNG sales to South Korea. 5, approval permits for the Lake Charles LNG export facility. And then 6, a review of U.S. offshore oil and gas leasing. 4 out of the 6 directly impact your industry, maybe all 6 do in certain markets. But just a word about our exports. The president is very focused on exports, particularly crude oil and LNG. Some of the projections are that by 2020, we'll be exporting 4 times the amount of crude oil that we are today. And by next year, we'll be importing 5 times the amount of LNG that we did last year. So how does this relate to the theme of the session, taking leadership for responsible operations? Under the Trump administration, we will see the greatest regulatory rollback ever seen. With less heavy-handed federal regulation, the responsibility becomes ours, our industries, to assure increasingly safe, reliable, affordable, and clean energy production. Our responsibility for leadership is at our level, not the U.S. federal government level. Now let me just convey how overly regulated our industry became in the last 8 years, and you'll get the picture of why we're rolling back these regulations. Our Environmental Protection Agency had nearly 4,000 new rules in 8 years. That's 500 a year, that's 10 a week, that's 2 new rules every working day. I get a sense that's overregulation. Our Bureau of Ocean Energy Management put out 140 new rules in the last 2 years of the Obama administration. So you have 104 weeks and you do 140 new rules. 140 new rules in 104 weeks. If you look at the Clean Air Act, in the 20 years of the Bush 1, Clinton, and Bush II administrations, we had 8 new rules for the Clean Air Act, 8 new rules in 20 years. In the Obama administration, we had 54 new rules in 8 years. So 8 in 20, 54 in 8. Just one last example. For a mining permit in Canada and Australia, you can get a permit within 2 to 3 years of your application. In the United States, it takes us 7 years to permit a new mining operation. So we're going to be in a new regulatory rollback area, and we will improve administrative and operational efficiency by not having to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in ensuring and documenting compliance. All of us are going to be under pressure to take leadership for responsible operation. If we fail for safety, if we fail for cleanness, if we fail for affordability, if we fail for reliability, in a future administration, we're going to see a regulatory overreach that far surpasses what we just lived through in the last 8 years. It's going to get much worse. And when you look at our industry, we have a lot of pressures to perform and to produce and to illustrate that leadership in excellent operations. All of our constituents insist that we operate responsibly. Government officials at all levels, shareholders, all other stakeholders, our customers, our employees, and I think most importantly, our future employees. We are retiring 65-year-old employees and replacing them with 25-year-old employees. At least in the United States, and I suspect in many of your countries, the 25-year-olds have a whole different perspective, particularly when it comes to climate change issues, than the 65-year-olds. These kids all want to work for a company that's clean, green, and cool. And if we're not a company that's clean, green, and cool, they're going to go to work for somebody else instead of coming to work for us. Our industry is so central to global economic and social progress, critical to every citizen's success, their standard of living, critical to peace and prosperity. Our industry must attract the sharpest minds that are available. If we're going to meet our goals of providing access to 1.1 billion people who don't have it, to 1.1 billion people who don't have adequate access to energy, and seeing a population growth of 2 billion people, we literally are doubling our energy service to our customers in the next 35 years, by mid-century. Doubling our energy services to our customers while decarbonizing the energy sector. At least in the Western world, we're expected to reduce our carbon footprint by 80% by 2050. And we're only going to get there if we have the smartest kids working for us. Clean, green, and cool. And that's what we have to be to get the smartest kids. And we need the best. We need the brightest. We need the future Rex Tillerson. We need the future Dan Yergin. We need the future Bob Dudley. And we need the future Elizabeth Tordstan. Please, thank you very much for your kind attention.
So clean, green, and cool. I think we'll all remember that. Thank you, Barry. So next up, and the final speaker today is Dr. Mir Hossein Zamaninia. He's a career diplomat out of Iran, currently the Deputy Minister of Petroleum for Trade and International Affairs. But he's had a true international flair to his career, serving at the Permanent Mission to the United Nations in headquarters in New York from 1989 to 1999. He's been an ambassador. He has been now the foreign policy advisor to the office of President Rouhani since his election to presidency. And I'm excited to hear what you have to share with us today. So welcome to the podium.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here. It's my first time in WPC, but no Iranian makes less than 3-4 visits to Istanbul every year. We feel quite at home here in Istanbul. It's also an honor to be present in the company of the co-panelists, so distinguished personalities. There was some comments about career choices that Mr. Worthington said. When I was thinking about this, I thought that I have made, every time I have had a career change, I have made the worst decision at the worst time. I joined the foreign ministry at the peak of Iran-Iraq war in 1984, and I joined the oil ministry when the price of oil dropped from over 100 to around 40. But I don't complain. There was, when I saw this title, Taking Leadership in Responsible Operation, I was puzzled by what it means. That's why I asked Mr. Dudley, when I first met him, the first day, the day before yesterday, that I'll go after you to see what the title implies. Question of safety, question of environment, transparency, corruption, and the key words of Mr. Worthington was clean, green, and cool. I don't know what cool means, but I think it's something good. I think it's recognized that business in oil and gas and energy cannot be as usual in production, distribution, and in its use. Energy intensity is a problem that the majority of population on the planet face. Perhaps people in Japan or in Germany do not face a formidable challenge as far as energy intensity is concerned, but Japan and Germany and other industrialized countries do not constitute the global community. The global community per se comprises of billions of people, 3 billion of which do not have access to energy for cooking. 1 billion of them do not have access to electricity. Therefore, business as usual, even if we hire the brightest, cannot continue forever. Awareness is growing within the oil industry about the global need for sustainable development and for Sustainable Development Goal, particularly Goal 7, which is affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. These ambitious objectives are threefold: universal access to energy, doubling the share of renewable energy in the global energy mix, and also doubling the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. Our mindset is usually set in industrialized countries. Perhaps in many of the industrialized countries, doubling the share of renewable energy has already taken place, but we are talking about global community. That is where the principle, the international relation principle of common but differentiated responsibility becomes the cross-cutting principle if we are to forge a decent human life on Earth, including those related to energy. Previous speakers, they all have spoken about the need for energy and the need for greater amount of energy in the years to come, which is mostly in East Asia, India and China. Mr. Dudley spoke about the virtues of gas in fossil fuel mix. Therefore, I should take the credit here. Iran, as a country that holds the greatest reserve of gas, being close to India and to China, where energy demand is high and it's going to be higher. Therefore, Iran must have a great role, an important role in the future energy market, particularly in the global gas market. I was saying yesterday that in terms of oil, Iran is a heavyweight with 110 years of experience, but in the gas market, we are the new kid on the block. By the year 2021, we think we'll be in a position to have a spare capacity of about 365 million cubic meters per day. And that should set us somewhere in the global gas market. Now, I skip my semi-philosophical approach to the question of responsible operation, going through the environment and the question of common but differentiated responsibility, and the SDG 7, which does not seem to have a good chance by the year 2030, but we leave that aside. I want to tell you in a few minutes, 3-4 minutes, as to what it is that we in Iran are doing, and we take pride in our part of the world as being responsible in the energy sector. We have substituted liquid fuel with gas for our power generation plants. In 2014, 43% of the feed for power plants were liquid fuel, and now only 14% liquid fuel is used, and the rest is gas is supplied to them. We supply about 62 BCM of gas to our power plants, while only 3 years ago it was only 36 BCM. We have a no flaring policy. We think by the year 2021, we should have zero flare in Iran. We do not license any new projects that has no zero flare policy. We have decreased our flaring from 2.5 million cubic meters per day to about 0.08 already per day. We have defined about $20 billion worth of projects for energy efficiency. That is where that common and differentiated responsibility comes in. Energy efficiency requires technology, and that is if we work and act like a global community, community being meaning a number of people with the same goal, with the same strategy to achieve goals. That is where technology comes in, and we need up-to-date technology in order to achieve these energy efficiency projects, which have a great IRR. We have defined 8 projects for this year, saving a total of 470 billion liters of gasoline and replacing it with 32 BCM of gas. For this year, the Ministry of Oil and Gas Ministry in Iran has undertaken to substitute close to 20,000 buses with state-of-the-art gas-based buses, 140,000 taxis, more than 10,000 trucks. It has undertaken to engage and be a partner to expand railroads in Iran, expand subways in Tehran and 8 major cities. It has undertaken to fund upgrading vehicle production in Iran. It is estimated that by the year 2030, these projects will have reduced greenhouse gases equivalent to 1,242 million tons of CO2. We take pride in Iran that in the last 3-4 years, we have increased our gas being supplied to Iranian families. 91% of all families in Iran have access to piped gas in their homes. 91%. 95% in cities, and about 89% in rural areas. Iran has a diverse economy, a large economy, 18th largest economy in the world. We have made tremendous progress in terms of reducing reliance of national budget on revenues of oil and gas. From 43% only 4 years ago to about 29% now. We have reduced inflation from 45% to about 10, or a little under 10. I like to say two sentences about transparency and corruption. One of the silver linings of sanctions unduly imposed on Iran was that we relied on our own engineering base and increased our production, and at the same time decreased our reliance on oil revenue, as I said, from 43% to 29%. But the downturn was the sanctions promoted corruption in Iran. large volumes of corruption in the oil and gas business. In order to circumvent sanctions that were considered unjustified and just, many got engaged in trade of oil in order to circumvent sanctions, and the money, I mean the nation, Iranian people were robbed off of the proceeds of those crude that were supposed to circumvent sanctions and return the money back to Iran by close to $6–7 billion. Thank you very much for bearing with me.
Thank you all very much. We still have some time for a bit of questions, and I'd like to ask all of you around the topic of collaboration and partnership, because you've touched on that in various aspects. So let's start with you, Bob. You said business based on relationship is not only transactional. What are the key elements of those collaborationships? What makes it important for BP, and when do you see those type of relationships being successful?
Well, I think you have to have a very long-term mindset, and the oil and gas industry is one of the longest wavelength investment industries in the world. And most certainly during these relationships, there are times when contracts get out of balance, sometimes negotiated 20 or 30 years ago, the ones you put in place. And I think it's like everything in life, you have to put yourself in the other person's shoes and work through difficulties rather than every clause in a contract. Sometimes I can think of, I'll give Egypt as an example. High oil prices, $100 a barrel, way behind in receivables to BP. We could have applied the contract, written off the loans, and said it wasn't right. We stuck with the nation of Egypt, and now it's all back in balance, and we're considered a long-term investor and very happy. These are the kinds of things in oil and gas that are really very important. So contracts are important, sanctity of contracts and agreements, but flexibility in these relationships is the only way, I think, to have a long-term business.
Thank you. And Barry, you're leading an organization that's bipartisan, representing a number of companies with very different interests, and yet you're successful in driving partnerships and driving specific projects across those industries. What can you say? What's the key criteria that makes those partnerships successful for you?
I think whether you have a partnership between individuals, corporations, other organizations, or for that matter, between nations, you have to enter into a negotiation with the view that I want both sides to be winners in this. So often in personal life and in relationships between nations, one party looks at a negotiation as, I need to win, meaning you need to lose. And that's doomed for failure in your personal life, in your marriage, or in your career, or amongst nations. If it's I win, you lose, you both fail. You have to find the soft spot where everybody walks away as a winner.
Thank you. Amir, you were talking about Iran's role in the world and in the global world of gas and reaching out for collaboration and partnerships. What do you have to add to?
I like how Mr. Worthington narrated this. It's a win-win situation, not only in business but in marriage.
Just ask my boss.
This is really something to think about. If we take this approach in our personal life, that one does not win and the other one does not need to lose, picture that how happy we are going to be in our lives. The same is true in business. In business, you need to recognize the legitimate interest of the party sitting across from the table from you. It's not a zero-game policy. You all perhaps remember that the 5+1 discussion, negotiations, the nuclear deal negotiation on all sides, they called it a win-win situation, a win-win deal. I'm not talking about Washington for the past few months and the new administration that they need to come up with their new evaluation of the things, but the entire community of nations who were engaged, not only who were directly engaged, but others, European Union, Asians, non-aligned, they called this a win-win situation where everybody thought that it gained something from this deal. Now, in the oil and gas business, we have tried. See, Iran, even though it has 110 years of experience, but the ratio of our production to our reserve is very insignificant. We do not produce as much as we must compared with others in respect of our reserves. Therefore, we have come up with a new model contract where we think that the interest of Iranian National Oil Company and its foreign partner can be seen in that contract for 20 years. That is an extended period of partnership, we think, has helped us and the foreign partners we are in negotiation with to serve with this principle of win-win situation and to guarantee the interest of both sides.
Thank you very much.
I think we have a new phrase, clean, green, cool, and fair. I think that's Mr. Worthington's way of putting it.
I think that's a very good summing up of the whole session. Actually, we're approaching our closing time, and I'd like to thank all of you for your contributions, and thank you so much.
Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research established this research center, which is the Petroleum Research Center, with the aim to make it a regionally recognized center of excellence in both upstream and downstream technologies.
The main purpose of this center actually is to serve the oil sector and to be the R&D arm of the petroleum industry in Kuwait.
It has a foundation. It is the first in the region. It was started in 1967, so it has a fairly amount of maturation.
The development of technologies in different areas is a continuous process. Why you develop every time? Because there is a need, there is a requirement, there is a way that you have to find a cost-effectiveness technology, impress technology which can fulfill your requirement.
There is enormous challenges that the petroleum industry is facing, and those challenges definitely needs innovative answers.
We are concentrating on how to improve the reserved oil in the country, how we can probably develop technologies to improve the recovery.
In this center, we have 5 types of programs. Each program is focused in one area in the field. First program, we call it Enhance Oil Recovery. Enhance Oil Recovery means their work is totally with the upstream.
The reservoir is the more complex part of the earth geology. And as we go to deeper and more difficult oil, we need more understanding. This way we will enhance our capability of producing at lower costs.
If we develop a technology which has to do related to enhanced oil recovery, increasing the production, This technology, of course, can be used in any other country, in the GCC countries or in the world, based on how much effective is this technology.
Another two programs, we call one of them optimization refining processes, and we have refining capacity flexibility. These two programs under the downstream process.
This program particularly deals with the hydroprocessing. Hydroprocessing means you treat the petroleum fraction in presence of the catalyst and the hydrogen.
We have a number of patents related to the spent catalyst in which we try to develop a technology to recover the metals as well as to reuse this spent catalyst. This can be used everywhere if it is acceptable and then commercialized.
We are very good in catalysis monitoring. Also, we have now for producing the catalyst as well. We're preparing of the catalyst evaluation, and also we are doing it in our labs. We have here a unique lab. We call it pilot plant, which is simplified from the refinery.
We try to align our research activities with the requirement needed by KNPC, and at the same time having this facility which I'm talking now here is give us the opportunity, because this consider a small refinery which is mimicking the real refinery. It's operational 24 hours. So if we target a certain specific product, so we can make a full study, giving the results, upon the completion of the results, giving it to the client, namely KNPC, there is a great potential to they use it on the commercial units.
It's important because the refinery and all the technology are changing with the years, okay, in order to take account of the environment. But more you take account of the environment, you reduce the gain of the refinery. You have to maintain your gain respecting the environment. Because of this, we are developing this technology that they are taking account all these elements.
Petroleum refining, you are processing specific feedstock, but this feedstock's also properties is changing, so you need to develop catalyst. As the property changes, the sulfur content, for example, the sulfur content is increasing. So what technology that you have to use in order to reduce the sulfur, to be accepted worldwide, so the people, they can buy your commodity or your product, which is meeting the international standards. So the demand for technology development is always there.
Fourth one, which is the corrosion assessment and mitigation. And here it's falling into two areas, which is downstream and upstream, and to prevent any kind of failures happens in the future.
Cost of corrosion for the oil industry is in millions. Imagine a simple failure in a refinery, a crack in a vessel or a pipe or a reactor. It means for the refinery shutdown of a unit, and they take several days to change the damaged piece of equipment. So you lose production for several days.
The last one, which will be petrochemicals.
In our program, we are focused on enhancing the product properties, and we are focusing as well on trying to engineer high-performance polymers. In these two solutions, we can help the sector to be more competitive in comparison with the market and international market products.
There are many technologies worldwide, but which technology would suit the reservoir that you have? Imagine not only each country has its own oil properties, but each well, it has its own characteristics. So in this case, you have to really look into technology to produce what we call this type of crude oil, which is under category of non-conventional oil recovery. That's why we introduced the improved oil recovery, the enhanced oil recovery, to produce the heavier feedstock.
We're also responsible to have staff to be well-skilled and trained, Kuwaiti staff in particular, also having students from university, from public authority to to having their, for example, their thesis or something like that. So we work collaboratively with those affiliation in order to end up with high caliber staff that can not only be used at Kisar but also in the oil sector.
We have to really be ready and confident in our research projects that we conduct, and also to be highly recognized and acknowledged for the science and technology and innovation, locally, regionally, and internationally.
I think the needs require such institute to exist, not only in Kuwait and the region, but all over the world, because energy is one of the main factors that impact sustainability.
We have a fantastic team, we have a marvelous equipment under one roof, so it is really a platform to start directional research in all kinds.
The vision is clear now. Based on this close relationship that we have, now it's getting more and clearer to us exactly where to focus and how to probably achieve these plans that we set.
ArcX is a collaboration project involving 6 universities, 4 research institutes and 8 oil companies in Norway. And our aim and goal is to understand the petroleum resources of the Arctic, how to develop the best possible technology that suits the Arctic, which has the least possible environmental impact. The research is mainly divided into 3. So 3 intertwined projects. One is to understand the Arctic geology.
We're dealing with petroleum geology and exploration of the Barents Shelf, so of course geology is a very crucial and important component. I've been working with several different projects and different aspects of sedimentation in Svalbard and the Barents Sea. But particularly I've been focusing on the Paleogene succession that were deposited 60 million years ago in what they call the central basin of Spitsbergen. So I think this basin is a good analog to some of the basins that you find along the western Barents Shelf margin.
Here you can see there's a layer in the rocks that is a bit darker here, and across the fault you see that this block here has gone down on the other side of the fault. Here you have a layer of sediments here that is thicker where the fault has moved down, so you had some space to deposit more sediments.
Of course, when it comes to exploration, having Svalbard as an uplifted part of the subsurface is very important, because then we can use this as an analog to the stratigraphy that the companies are working with in the southern part of the Barents Sea.
The other one is to understand the environmental impact of our activities.
We operate with ecosystem-based management in this region of the world, and that means it's a balance of protecting the environment but also utilizing the resources that exist there. And that is a big challenge, because you have to bring all the stakeholders to the table, you have to communicate the risks, and you have to come up with solutions and manage the future development activities. The final component is a focus on marine mammals, because marine mammals are at the top of the food web in the Arctic. They're very much associated with sea ice, so we have a very strong focus on marine mammals in the program.
Marine ecology is an important part of ArcX, because we want to work sustainable, and we need to understand the ecosystem. In case something happens, then we need to understand which consequences it can have for the ecosystem.
And the third is to develop the best possible eco-friendly technology that is suitable in these vulnerable areas.
We are taking part in other projects that use new technology to collect data and analyze data. So of course that's the link between kind of old school conventional geology, being out in the field, is easily combined with new technology.
We also do some technology projects where we develop drone technology for use in these areas, and that requires special infrastructure.
I use drones or unmanned aerial vehicles to look at marine mammals, more specifically whales. They fly in using waypoints, following a set path that we design in a computer with the help of Norut. And then every 3 or 4 seconds they take a picture, and then I look to see if there is a whale there or not, and look at the quality of that picture to see how certain I am and what are the light conditions. It's essentially to test how good these tools are, because the use of these systems is quite recent and has been developing really fast. So having this for marine mammals, it removes almost completely having the observation that you collect at sea and then goes away, that nobody else can look at that. So then you have a recording that several people can see, and you can remove what's so-called as the observer bias.
The biggest resource we have in a program like this is the group of young people.
We have a number of PhD students and postdocs based at universities, but they are also coupled to institutes.
What I'll be doing is that I will investigate the source rock properties of a specific period, the Triassic period, and also next year we plan to go to Svalbard and collect samples there as well. So I will also be collecting samples in Bjørnøya. And we'll correlate that with wells which have been drilled in the Barents Sea, and we can see how these properties of the source rock changes laterally, and then we can try to determine how the quality of the source rock is in terms of hydrocarbon potential.
We conduct many field expeditions and research expeditions, and it could be close by, or it could be trips that require the use of ships. And the University of Tromsø has a research vessel that we use for that. And then we have access to very good laboratories at several of the participating universities, but also industry partners help us with their laboratories. So all in all, it's a complicated mix of different infrastructure that helps us to conduct the research and give the best possible results back to the participants. I don't know any other project which brings all of these activities together into one project like this. And also the sheer volume and size of this project is such that we will have an impact. It's an 8-year project involving many partners.
The cooperation between the academia, the government and the companies as cooperators is very unique in a Norwegian setting at least. And the size of the project and the diversity is also very unique.
It's a continuous process of improving the way we do things as new knowledge comes to the table.
By getting the communication going, we can actually also get good information back from authorities that we can use to improve our research programs. The ultimate delivery, I think, is that we would have been very useful for the authorities, for the oil companies, and for the research institutions and universities who are involved in the project. We will have educated about 30 PhD students and trained postdocs, and we will have published a set of good papers in the best journals.
Dear guests, of Petroleum Affairs, I would like to introduce you Mr. Ömer Koca, Director General, for giving his presentation.
Hayırlı sabahlar. Hepiniz hoş geldiniz.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you.
Bizleri tercih ettiğiniz için teşekkür ederiz.
Thank you for making it here.
Bildiğiniz gibi
As you are very
kanunu
well
buradan
aware
anlatmak
of,
son derece zor.
it is very difficult to talk about law. Law is something you need to experience. It is like a book, like a story. You need to take it like a story. I mean, you cannot
Daha doğrusu uygulamak lazım.
consider it as a story. You need to experience it, and then you're going to learn about all the punctuation marks and
Dolayısıyla burada Türk Petrol
make it more meaningful. So I cannot say that I'm going to talk about the Turkish oil law. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to talk about the main approach of the law and what it contains, and I'm going to offer some keywords, so to speak. But you can experience law.
Petrol İşleri Genel Müdürlüğü hakkında biraz bilgi vermek
Let
istiyorum.
me
Petrol İşleri Genel Müdürlüğü
inform you briefly about the General Directorate of Petroleum Affairs. Our main role is to look into exploration in Turkey. We offer the documents, and then, moreover, in line with the business plans,
yıllık olarak planın devamı edip etmediği konusunda kontrol
we check whether the plan
yani Petrol İşleri Genel Müdürlüğü
works on a yearly basis. So the General Directorate of Petroleum Affairs is in charge of exploration.
sunuma yansıda görüldüğü gibi
As you might see on the slide,
3 başlıktan
I will
devam edeceğim.
have 3 layers
Birinci bölüm
in my presentation. First, I'm going to talk about licensing procedures, and secondly, I will dwell upon royalty and fiscal regime, and thirdly, I'll be informing you related to incentives.
Petrol İşleri Genel Müdürlüğü
Our institution provides 3 types of licenses. First comes exploration license, and then comes production license.
ruhsatlandırma işlemini yapıyoruz.
So there is the survey permit, exploration license, and production lease.
Türkiye öncelikli olarak 2 bölgeye ayırmışız. Ruhsatlandırma işlemi yapılır.
In terms of licensing,
Deniz,
Turkey's territory is divided into 2 districts. One is onshore and the other one is offshore. Offshore district is divided into 2 parts, territorial waters and outside of territorial waters.
haritada görülen grid sistemine göre
According to the grid system,
ruhsat olarak verilebilir.
each grid
İsterseniz her ruhsat
might be defined as a license. The borders and sizes of the exploration licenses are designed according to International Geographical Grid System.
orada gördüğünüz işte en küçük kareyi komple bir ruhsat olarak da alabilirsiniz.
Even the smallest square might be deemed as a license. So the borders of the license is quite simple to us,
İdari yöntem açısından gerçekten büyük bir kolaylık sağlar.
and it makes our job easier, so to speak.
Ruhsat alanı 1/50.000
As for the licensing procedure, license boundaries are set based on 1 to 50,000 scale sheet, and it corresponds to 56,000 hectares.
ikisini de alabilirsiniz. 3'ünü de alabilirsiniz.
Minimum size is 15,000 hectares.
Burada kalmak şartıyla bir ruhsat alabiliyorsunuz. Dolayısıyla en büyük ruhsat bir
So the biggest license, the maximum size of license is 1 to 50,000.
yani münhasır ekonomik
In the exclusive economic zone,
ruhsatlandırma işlemleri
license boundaries are set based on 1 degree of latitude and longitude of area.
1 derecelik alan üzerinden verilmektedir. Bu da aşağı yukarı 1 milyon
So the maximum size of license is a 1 degree of area. It corresponds to average 1 million hectares,
aşağı yukarı bu da 250.000 hektarlık bir büyük
and it corresponds to the minimum size of a license is 1 to 100,000. Let me dwell upon licensing procedures and what it means to us, what it covers. First comes survey permit. It's not about exploration, it's not about production. It is granted for geological and geophysical data collection. So you survey, you conduct a survey, and you can check whether it is worth to conduct a survey. So this survey is granted. Granted survey permit does not constitute any impediment for granting the same areas as a license or lease. Right owners have the right to sell the data that they collect. As you are very well aware of, geophysical is about making comments. Since it is based on making comments, then you can grant more than one license to the same area. And the data is submitted to the ministry by survey companies. Collected data is open to the parties at the end of 8 years, and you have the right to market the data you collect. However, you need to inform the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources, and following the 8 years period, we have the right to sell the data. The goal is the survey permit covers a period of 8 years, and only one company takes hold of the information in that period. If that area is granted to more than one company, then each and every company has the right to market that data. Next comes exploration license. There is anyone listening to the English interpretation? Could you please raise your hand? Thank you, sir. So, exploration license gives some rights to the right holders. It is about performing exploration activities, making investigation on the land around license, and developing the area where the petroleum is discovered, and producing petroleum. According to law, there are 4 main pillars. So the license application assessment is based on 4 pillars. First comes the experience of the applicants. We ask ourselves as to whether the company that applies to us has any experience. We already have data about the company, so once we get a new offer, we check the information related to that. We check their history. We check as to whether they can do this business. If one company leaves the area before the procedure is over, then another company is prioritized, because we focus on making the job done as soon as possible. And secondly comes the application, and we check whether the application is in line with the law, because there is one certain file that they need to bring to us. We check the file itself. And next comes the work and investment program of the company. For instance, if there is more than one company that would like to work on the same area, then competition starts. And we check out the work and investment program of the companies in this regard. if one company makes more seismic work, then we give privilege to them. For instance, there might be even 9 or 10 companies that would like to get the same location, that would like to work on the same location. When there's competition between companies, then we check out the work and investment program of those companies. And fourth comes technical and financial capabilities. Currently, technical capabilities are provided by various operators. For instance, you make an agreement, and you make an agreement related to the technical capabilities, and you can work with the best people. You can employ the best people. Although this fourth pillar is not that much important to us, then it has a place in the way that we assess the license applications. First, we assess the companies, and then the company which is successful on those 4 pillars will be getting the contract. For instance, there is the issue of security. It doesn't have a place in the law, but security is vital to us. We ask ourselves whether we can confide in this company. If there is a problem related to the safety or security, then we will not work with that company. Let me talk about the application procedures. Once an application is made, then it will be announced by the General Directorate of Petroleum Affairs in the official gazette. The announcement covers the sheet number of the block and deadline in order to provide equal opportunity for other potential investors. The official gazette will be covering this announcement for 90 days after the first application. All applications covering the same field are evaluated together following 90 days. And as I've told you previously, we will go for the 4 pillars of assessment. As for the requirements for a license, first we ask for a work and investment program from all applicants. So 2% amount of work and investment program is taken as guarantee for the onshore blocks. And then we tell them that they have to work in line with the work and investment program granted to us. Our goal is not to punish them. Our goal is to make them approach the work in a serious manner and attract them accordingly. 1% amount of work and investment program is taken as guarantee for the offshore blocks. Ministry is authorized whether the guarantee is taken or not for the unexplored blocks or for unconventional resources. So if there is no research or exploration made previously, then we don't get any security deposit. And we do it as an incentive, without getting any security deposit. As for the terms of licenses, the license terms have been set as 5 years for onshore and 8 years for offshore. Onshore licenses term can be extended 2 times for 2 years. On offshore, the cost is quite high. That's why we allocate more time, which is 8 years to us. The term of onshore licenses might be extended twice. For instance, if you have a license for 5 years, then you can extend it for 2 years, and you can do it twice. In total, you'll get a license of 9 years. When it comes to offshore licenses, the term might be extended for 3 years, and you can do it twice. In addition, licenses might be extended for another 2 years after discovery for commercial evaluation. If the field has a commercial value, then the license might be extended for another 2 years. Licensing procedure is the third type of license to us. In order to get this license, first you need to have an exploration license. For instance, if you have an agreement with an exploration company, then with the approval of the ministry, you can get the lease and you can be a partner of the lease. Lease is granted to the license holder for the discovered area in case of discovery, and the area, the remaining parts out of the lease, that stays out of the lease, keeps its existing rights until the expiration date of license. So you're going to have the exploration license until it is expired, until it expires. And then once it expires, the procedures will go on as required. Leases are granted for a specific period up to 20 years, taking recoverable reserves and production program into consideration. And with the law, if you would like to get a lease, then depending on the productivity of performance of the production field and the production program, the lease can be extended twice for 10 years. In total, it makes 20 years. First, you have to check out the production program, and the company, let's say, if depending on the productivity performance, might get the license for 20 years. If the program is approved by the General Directorate of Petroleum Affairs, you will get 20 years. And then, once 20 years is over, depending upon the production performance and the production plan, you will get the lease for 40 years, since it will be extended. If there is a production of 3 years and you would like to get the license for 10 years, then we will grant 10 years for you. In case that you have a plan for the remaining 7 years. In total, if there are no accidents, no problems, normally a company will get the lease for 40 years, and following the 40 years, the term will be over. First, Turkish Petroleum has the right to get this area. If they don't want to get the area, then it will be sold via bidding, and the best bidder will be taking the area. When it comes to the lease that is offered for the methane gas, we haven't put it into place yet. Last year, in June, another article, another subparagraph was added to the related article. In order to produce the methane gas in the mine specified in the subparagraph of the fourth group of the second article of mining law, numbered 3213, methane gas operating license shall be granted to the owner of the mine. So the regulation changed accordingly. Probably it will be approved very soon, and it will be offered to the Prime Ministry. Currently, it is being checked by the Court of Accounts, and we will be able to grant license related to methane gas accordingly. And we will contribute to economy significantly by approving this law. Sami Sarıyıldız will be taking the floor very soon, and he will be delivering a presentation related to this point. It will be opening up the horizon to us, so to speak. If we can materialize in this regard, the current reserve is 5.1 billion, and if we can materialize our work, then 1,030 billion will be the reserve that we will get, and it will contribute significantly to our economy. It corresponds to $35 to $37 billion. I hope we will succeed in this regard. The law puts that you need to have the mining license in order to get the methane gas lease. And we say that you need to have 5 cubic meters methane at least, and you need to grant us with the documents. And once we get the documents, then we will approve them. At least 5 cubic meters per ton methane gas is requested in granting the methane gas operating license. I hope we will have the regulation in place very soon. Moreover, 1/8 ratio royalty is taken from produced methane gas. The Council of Ministers is authorized to increase this rate up to 4 times or to reduce it to the half of its current amount. Normally, it is 1/8, as I've told you, and the Council of Ministers has the right to increase it up to 4 times or reduce it. And I believe that it is a huge incentive for the leaseholders. Now that I'm done talking about the lease, let me talk about the fiscal regime. There is a certain amount of royalty, and this royalty is 1/8. 1/8 royalty is collected for both oil and natural gas production. Royalty is taken in cash per barrel for oil and per cubic meter for natural gas. The royalty is calculated based on market price for crude oil and wholesale price for natural gas. When it comes to capital investment and profit transfers, foreign investors have the right to transfer their capital investments after starting production on condition that they pay royalty. Until the investment capital registered by the Ministry is fully transferred, investment capital is free of all taxes. So no tax applies until GDPA is fully transferred. After the payment of taxes, duties, fees, rentals and royalties, petroleum right holders may transfer their profits abroad. Let me dwell upon the taxes. They cannot pay taxes more than 55% of their income. This is what the law puts. The total tax, except royalty, paid by petroleum right holders might not exceed 55% of their incomes. 20% corporate tax, 15% withholding tax, 2.5% shareholders tax are collected from the companies and their shareholders based on their annual revenue. In relation to tax and duty exemptions, private consumption tax is not taken on equipment used for petroleum activities. Stamp tax is not taken on agreements and service contracts regarding petroleum activities. All kinds of equipments imported for exploration activities are free of all taxes, tariffs and fees. Materials imported for production activities are subjected to value-added tax only. So we get only value-added tax. Petroleum right holders might transfer the materials to the other petroleum right holders and their contractors. So once exploration is over, you might transfer the materials to the other petroleum right holders. In this slide, you might see the tax and duty exemptions. What might be interesting is related to fuel. For instance, we do not get VAT and SCT, so you pay like 1/3 of the total amount. Fuel is the most difficult part for the companies. Once you make a reduction for 60 to 70%, then the companies will be relieved and they will make investments. Let me dwell upon expropriation. For petroleum operations, if the land belongs to private owners, then the right holders can obtain the land through agreement with the owner. As you are very well aware of, in US, the private owner has the right for all the resources over the land and below the land. However, in our country, the private owners have right only for the property over the land. In case of conflict related to using the land, petroleum right holders can apply to the ministry for the expropriation process. And the expropriation process is completed by the ministry. In case of expropriation, right holders pays the expropriation fee. It might be a local company or an international company. The utilization rights will continue for license period as part of the exploration license or production lease, and then it will be transferred to Treasury. So that is about the status of the expropriated company. Next comes temporary working permit. Employment of foreign personnel will be exempted from the labor law for 6 months or shorter periods. So we get the working permit related to those people. However, the permission is given by the Ministry of Energy. Following 6 months, companies have to apply to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security for the work permit. It marks the end of my presentation. Thank you all for your attention.
Evet, Sami Bey, siz mi? Tamam, buyurun.
Thank you, Mr. Koja, for your useful presentation. Now I will invite Head of Exploration and Production Department, Mr. Sami Sarıyıldız, for giving his presentation about methane gas and studies on the methane gas extraction activities in Turkey.
Herkese günaydınlar.
Hello and good morning. My main subject is methane gas, and after briefing you about it, I will also inform you about the related law which was issued in 2016, and according to this law, I will also inform you about the incentives on methane gas. As you all know, methane gas is a natural forming gas on coal beds, and it is identified as methane or natural gas. With the qualification, there is more than 95% of methane, and with smaller percentages also nitrogen and carbon dioxide is formed. After eliminating the risk of explosion, there are many different strategic reasons to extract this methane gas. When you compare it with carbon dioxide, it has 20 to 25 times more effective, and methane, instead of releasing it to the atmosphere, it is more sensible to use it as a source of heating, which can reduce the emissions to 20 folds, and it is proven with many researches. Tight gas or many different formations are available, or tight gas or shale gas are some unconventional gas, and the production of such gas is a bit different because their porosity is different. Production from these sources are hard, but in order to meet the demand of energy, of course, production of such gas sources are important. In our country, this is a new concept, CBM exploration and production facilities. There are some incentives, and of course we must support these incentives. And on this manner, as you can see, there is a legislation which was issued in 2016. And just like my general manager said, we conducted many studies, and we continue to put on some studies. Under the scope of exploration and production, we have gathered many data, and I will inform you about these as well. And on this subject, There is a condition that the amount of methane gas within the mines mentioned should be at least 5 cubic meters per ton is sought. Well, and so that you can issue an operational license. The methane gas produced can be merchandised in the market provided that it is licensed under the Natural Gas Market Law number 4646. And within the law, of course, this can be traded. And another important feature is that the state's right to be taken from the methane gas to be produced is taken at the rate stated in the Article 9. The Council of Ministers authorized to increase this rate up to 4 times. Just like all around the world, the demand of energy is increasing in our country as well, so coal-based methane as a source is crucial to have a diversified energy mix. So coal-based methane is perceived as an alternative, and when conventional fuel sources are on a decrease, and when this coal-based methane is such a great alternative, it has gained popularity. When you look at coal-based methane globally, there are many sources: China, Russia, USA, Canada, Australia, and many other countries see this energy source as a great alternative. And on the screen, you can see global production of unconventional gases. You can see 2012 figures, and you can see the projections. For CBM, the production in 2012 was 76 billion cubic meters, but it is projected that in 2040 this number will increase to 356 million cubic meters. Methane gas production depends on the gas content of the coal seam and surrounding rock, porosity, drainage, duration, production system, and other geological variables. Metal production can be carried out pre, during, and post-mining activities. When we look at the mining activities, well, in this method, the methane gas is produced by vertical or horizontal boreholes reaching to the coal seam directly from the ground. With this method, the first gas within the coal can be taken, and 50 to 90% of the gas content of the seam can be produced. So you can be independent from general mining activities, and before you start your actual mining activities, you can deploy this methane gas. And during mining activities, methane gas can be carried out with horizontal and cross boreholes during mining activities. The gas with an average of 5 to 12% oxygen, and you can produce this within the mining quarry. And the methane gas in the air of the mining quarry is extracted in this method, and so it is ensured that the uncontrolled methane release, which can be experienced underground, is prevented, and the occupational safety risks are minimized. Before production, drainage must be started, and during the production process, this drainage must be continued. And after mining activities, when we take a look at this, of course there is a risk of mine gas explosion due to methane presence in areas where actually the coal production is completed. But methane formation can also be seen in abundance sections in the underground coal mining. In case of fire, it is really hard to reach and to put off the fire. So with vertical or angular boreholes, you can pursue your extraction or drainage efforts to take all the methane gas out of these holes. So let's take a look at the global applications for methane gas and where these are used. As you can see in the USA, this high concentrated methane gas is directly delivered with natural pipelines. In India, it is used for electricity generation and as vehicle fuels in rural areas. When you take a look at Australia, the high concentrate methane gas is directly transmitted with pipelines, and in Indonesia, it is converted to LNG, and it is highly exported. So let's turn back to Turkey and production efforts. After the related law, there were many studies, and we have archived these studies. When you look at Turkey in the West Black Sea region, in Zonguldak Taşköprü Basin, it has 1.3 billion tons of coal reserves with 1,200 meters of depth. Middle East Technical University carried out a study in 1972, and according to this study, it is estimated that the average amount of methane gas in this coal mine in Kozlu is 28.73 cubic meters of tons is identified. And another study was carried out by TÜBİTAK in 1994, and this study was carried out to determine and identify the areas where we can find methane gas and coal. So when you look at the results, there is 620 million cubic meters of in-situ gas reserve, 120 billion cubic meters of producible gas, and 5 to 20 cubic meters tons of gas holding capacity. So in this area there is a huge potential, and in order to this potential to contribute to the economy, there was a tender named Coal-Based Methane Gas Research and Operation Project, and it was initiated in order to extract the methane gas that should be removed from the environment before the coal production activities due to hazards. In terms of diversity, this methane gas extraction is really important, and on this West Black Sea region, the first study started in 1996, and companies carried out many exploration studies, and in 1999 there was a production well, but it wasn't finalized. This project was not finalized. And after this study, we realized that this area also held many hazards. So the first methane gas was supposed to be extracted. And this area, this basin, was divided into 2 concussion fields, and the tender process began. Armutçuk, Kozlu, Üzülmez, Karadon, and Amasra regions were the regions of this tender, and this tender was carried out in 2005, and HEMA Natural Sources won this tender. And it was determined that this company had the right to carry out its activities for 17 years. 11 boreholes were drilled by this company during the 2-year research period. HEMA company had taken over the rights, and of course they carried out different reserve studies with two different companies. You can see on the screen that you can see the reserves and the years and the studies that were carried out. The first companies, as you can see, identified that there were 152 billion cubic meters of reserve, and the other company identified that there were 176 cubic meters of gas available there. And as a result of these studies, the field has been found to have a reserve of 7 to 14 cubic meter tons of gas reserves. And when it comes to field number 2, Delta International Oil and Construction Company won the tender, and in 2012 they signed an agreement. And according to this agreement, the operation period for the company that won the tender is 33 years in total, where the research phase and operation phase are 3 years and 30 years respectively. 3 research boreholes and 1 production boreholes were drilled by the company, and the methane gas research period has been completed in the field and the operation period has started. And apart from methane gas, lignite basins are really common in our country, and when you look at these basins, there were no effort on exploration or production. And after these activities that I have just mentioned, in Soma, which is one of our important basins, it is found that 600 million tons of visible reserves are available there. Absorption capacity depends on the class and quality of the coal, as you all know, and you can see minimum, average and maximum figures on the screen. In the area, there are 3 different classes of gas, and you can see the minimum and maximum amounts on the screen again. Absorbing capacity was of course taken into consideration while determining these figures, yet no work has yet been done to produce methane in this field. These figures are based on the coal exploration efforts. On this field, there hasn't been any scientific study, as I've just told you, and all the figures that I have given is based on the efforts of the PIGM. Let me tell you about the timing and the project costs. I have 3 main subjects, which are office studies, research drilling and test phase. And after the test phase, as you know, the operation period starts. In office studies, you need 2 or 3 prospects, which takes 6 to 12 months, and it's around $500,000 US. When it comes to research drilling, depending on the situation, 2B and 3B seismic data will be collected, and the cost is around $10,000 US for 2D seismic and $15,000 for 3D seismic for each kilometer square. And opening of 3 boreholes with the depths of 750 to 1,000 meters in each basin takes a 6 to 12 month period of time and requires an investment of around $2 million. When it comes to test phase, testing takes a 12 month of period and requires an investment of around $1 million US for each borehole. And total period for the research and production is it takes around 3 years, including the connections and every phase. So, in conclusion, Zonguldak Hard Coal Basin is considered to be among the quarries with highest methane gas risk. The gas to be removed will reduce the risk of life and property loss at the same time. The largest methane gas production is made with the production methods carried out prior to the mining activity. 50 to 90% of gas content of the seam can be produced prior to the mining operations. And within the scope of the project carried out by TÜBİTAK in 1994, 120 billion cubic meters of producible gas reserve with a calorific value of 11.470 kilocalories per cubic meters have been identified in the Zonguldak Basin. Studies carried out by other researchers have also represented the values close to TÜBİTAK figures. The gas holding capacity of the basin is between 5 to 20 cubic meters of tons. Necessary agreements have been made in the Turkish Petroleum Law number 6491 in order to remove the methane gas within the basin prior to the mining production activities and utilizing the gas removed from the environment, and bring the gas into the economy of the country. However, this must be supported with scientific researches, and of course the process for the regulation studies is ongoing. And since 2005, for the energy production alternatives and decreasing the dependency to external sources are set to be decreased, and in order to meet the demand, new coal reserves must be explored, and these efforts have accelerated since 2005. Our lignite reserves were around 8 tons, but as of the end of 2015 it is over 15 tons. When you consider the coal reserves, coal and methane-oriented studies are inevitable to increase. In terms of energy, we are trying to minimize our dependency to external sources, and of course finding new reserves will contribute to this effort. Extracting the methane gas pre-mining activities will contribute to the economy, of course, and so efforts continue on this matter. And there are many regulations to provide incentives. With the necessary regulation, the right holders will benefit from all the incentives, and all the necessary equipment that should be imported will be exempt from related tax. And for the activities, contracting or service agreements will be exempted from the stamped tax. And as you saw in the previous presentation, all the exemptions are also available on such efforts. Now, this legislation has reached to its final phase, and it will be finalized soon. Coal reserves are on an increase every single day, and we hope that we can rapidly identify the methane gas reserves as well. And on this matter, we are inviting all the investors to our country. Thank you so much for your attention.
Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research established this research center, which is the Petroleum Research Center, with the aim to make it a regionally recognized center of excellence in both upstream and downstream.
This is a fairly amount of maturation.
Continuous process. Why you develop every time? Because there is a need, there is a requirement, there is a way that you have to find a cost effectiveness technology, impress technology which can fulfill your requirement.
There is enormous challenges that the petroleum industry is facing, and those challenges definitely needs innovative answers.
We are concentrating on how to improve the reserved oil in the country, how we can probably develop technologies to improve the recovery.
In this center, we have 5 types of programs. Each program is focused in one area in the field. First program, we call it Enhance Oil Recovery. Enhance Oil Recovery means their work is totally with the upstream.
The reservoir is the more complex part of the earth geology, and as we go to deeper and more difficult oil, we need more understanding. This way we will enhance our capability of producing at lower costs.
If we develop a technology which has to do related to enhanced oil recovery, increasing the production, this technology, of course, can be used in any other country, in the GCC countries or in the world, based on how much effective is this technology.
Another 2 programs, we call one of them optimization refining processes, and we have refining capacity flexibility. These 2 programs under the downstream process.
This program particularly deals with the hydroprocessing. Hydroprocessing means you treat the petroleum fraction in the presence of the catalyst and the hydrogen.
We have a number of patents related to the spin catalyst in which we try to develop a technology to recover the metals as well as to reuse this spin catalyst. This can be used everywhere if it is acceptable and then commercialized.
We are very good in catalysis monitoring. Also, we have now for producing the catalyst as well. We're preparing of the catalyst evaluation, and also we are doing it in our labs. We have here a unique lab. We call it pilot plant, which is simplified from the refinery.
We try to align our research activities with the requirement needed by KNPC, and at the same time having this facility which I'm talking now here is give us the opportunity, because this consider a small refinery which is mimicking the real refinery. It's operational 24 hours, so if we target a certain specific product, so we can make a full study, giving the results. Upon the completion of the results, giving it to the client, namely KNPC, there is a great potential to use it on the commercial units.
It's important because the refinery and all the technology are changing with the years, okay, in order to take account of the environment. But more you take account of the environment, you reduce the gain of the refinery. You have to maintain your gain respecting the environment. Because of this, we are developing this technology that they are taking account all these elements.
Petroleum refining, you are processing specific feedstock, but this feedstock's also properties is changing, so you need to develop catalyst. As the property changes, the sulfur content, for example, the sulfur content is increasing. So what technology that you have to use in order to reduce the sulfur, to be accepted worldwide, so the people, they can buy your commodity or your product, which is meeting the international standards. So the demand for technology development is always there.
Fourth one, which is the corrosion assessment and mitigation. And here it's falling into 2 areas, which is downstream and upstream, and to prevent any kind of failures happens in the future.
Cost of corrosion for the or a pipe or a reactor. It means for the refinery shutdown of a unit, and they take several days to change the damaged piece of equipment. So you lose production for several days.
The last one, which will be petrochemicals.
Solutions, we can help the sector to be more competitive in comparison with the market and international market products.
There are many technologies worldwide, but which technology would suit the reservoir that you have? Imagine not only each country has its own oil, each well, it has its own characteristics. So in this case, you have to really look into technology to produce what we call this type of crude oil, which is under category of non-conventional oil recovery. That's why we introduced the improved oil recovery, the enhanced oil recovery, to produce the heavier feedstock.
We're also responsible to have staff to be well-skilled and trained, Kuwaiti staff in particular, also having students from university, from public authority to having their, for example, their thesis or something like that. So we work collaboratively with those affiliation in order to end up with high caliber staff that can not only be used at Kisar but also in the oil sector.
We have to really be ready and confident in our research projects that we conduct, and also to be highly recognized and acknowledged for the science and technology and innovation, locally, regionally, and internationally.
I think the needs require such institute to exist, not only in Kuwait and the region, but all over the world, because energy is one of the main factors that impact sustainability.
We have a fantastic team, we have a marvelous equipment under one roof, so it is really a platform to start directional research in all kinds.
The vision is clear now. Based on this close relationship that we have, now it's getting more and clearer to us exactly where to focus and how to probably achieve these plans that we set.